So this is a video I've been planning on doing for quite a while now, with the 9th generation consoles pretty much nearly at the end of their lifespan, with the Nintendo Switch 2 coming out soon, and who knows when the next Xbox and PlayStation will come out. I figured it's time to compare the controllers for all three of the consoles and see how they hold up today. This is also the first video being recorded by my Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus. Greetings, comrades. This is Another Caleb back with another kind of random video. One I've actually been planning to do for quite a while, and this is completely unscripted because, well, I kind of want to compare the three controllers from the three main consoles of the current 9th generation. That being the Xbox Series X and S with their controller, the PlayStation 5 with the DualSense controller, and the Nintendo Switch with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. And this isn't going to be like a heavily detailed or expert like comparison between the three or anything like that. I'm basically just going to be talking about a few things about the controllers, what I like and what I dislike about them. And again, this is all a matter of opinion. You know, everyone has their favorites. And before I continue, I'm going to put up right off the bat, all three of these controllers are great. They all have their advantages and disadvantages, which I will get into shortly. But again, this is all a matter of opinion. If you like one controller or the other, that's great. Like I said, I like all three of these controllers, but which one do I like the most? Well, that's what the video is all about. So, we're going to talk about each controller one at a time and basically say what I like and don't like about the controllers. And I guess we'll start off with pretty much the workhorse of the PC, at least when it comes to controllers. The Xbox Core controller. That's what it's officially called, but I just call it the Xbox Series controller because it is an evolution of the Xbox One controller. And, well, evolution is putting it mildly because honestly they're not that much different from the Xbox One controller. Now, as far as comfort is concerned, I have pretty big hands, and this fits almost perfectly in my hands. I remember the 8-bit Ultimate controller, that fits perfectly in my hands. Against the way the grips are shit and stuff. But this, really comfortable as well. You know, I can easily reach the buttons and the thumbsticks and the D-pad without any strain. And I noticed there's a lot of dust on this controller because, well, I switched back and forth between quite a few controllers, and yeah, it's just one of them. But yeah, as far as comfort is concerned, it feels good in the hand, and it also helps. It has these little dimples on the grips here, give it a little extra comfort. Of course, it's gonna attract like, you know, Cheeto dust and like hand grease like there's no tomorrow. So yeah, have fun cleaning those. But yeah, it feels good in the hand, and appearance-wise, it's you know, basically run-on-the-mill controller. It comes in a variety of colors, and they release like a new special edition controller like every 30 minutes. Like the different Cypher controllers, those like pastel controllers or whatever. Heck, you make your own controllers to the Xbox Design Lab, which, tempting as it may be, I already have 2 Elite controllers, so I don't think I'm gonna need any of those anytime soon. By the way, I'm not going to be taking into account the Xbox Elite Series controllers or the DualSense Edge. We're talking about vanilla controllers, the ones you get, well, these you get for consoles. This you have to buy separately because the Switch came with Joy-Cons, not this. But yeah, we're talking about vanilla controllers only in this video. But yeah, very comfortable controller. Now, as far as buttons and stuff are concerned, I'm gonna be honest, I've been using this controller for like half a decade now, because I had this before I got an Xbox Series X, and I actually got one for the PC. In fact, one of these controllers was originally for the PC, then I got the Xbox Series X, and now that's controller number 2. But yeah, as far as buttons concerned, I got really used to these buttons. They're responsive. They you know, like have a nice little click to them. They don't feel mushy or anything like that. The thumbsticks, they feel pretty good, though. Naturally, these kind of thumbsticks, they're gonna attract, just like the grips, they're gonna attract like grease and stuff like nothing. So they're a bitch and a half to clean up, so that's something to keep in mind. Definitely get one of those. Of course, if you use like control freaks or anything like that, that shouldn't be much of a problem. But yeah, the buttons feel good, the joysticks feel good, joysticks, thumbsticks, whatever you want to call them. But one thing I really like about the Xbox Core controller, the Series controller, is the D-pad. Now, the original Xbox One controller just had a regular 4-way D-pad, but Microsoft introduced the Xbox Elite controller back in 2015, and it introduced this sort of hybrid dish D-pad, which you kind of see right here. Though that one's a little more flat. Here, the up, down, left, and right a little more pronounced, but you still got the diagonals here, so it makes playing fighting games with this a little easier. And has a nice, satisfying click to it. I really like the design of this D-pad, you know. Some people prefer the 4-way, some people for the 8-way, you know, to each their own. And yeah, you got the menu and options buttons here, the share button. There's your guide button to power on the Xbox, or connect it to the PC if you have it connected there, because, yeah, we'll get to that in the compatibility thing later on. And on top, you got your connect button for connecting to the Xbox, and of course, the PC via Bluetooth or wireless dongle, anything like that. And you got the bumpers and triggers. They're easy for me to reach. And one thing I noticed about the Series controller, pretty much all the surface of the triggers, they have this dimpling, whereas the bumpers, only this small little area here has that. Like, my fingers are mostly over here. I guess that's if you're like, you like keep your fingers on the triggers more. That makes it a little easier for you to hit these bumpers out, moving your fingers all the way. Me, I'm just used to switching bumpers to triggers because that's just how I do it. And in the back, you got your battery compartment. Now, here I have a battery pack here. Yeah, because they sell tons of different like battery packs and stuff, but this uses like 2 AA batteries, and it lasts a pretty good while, depending on what kind you get. But of course, you have rechargeable batteries. You just pop it on the dock, or charge the batteries, and you're good to go. And of course, on the bottom here, you have your 3.5mm headphone jack, and your little connection here for connecting like a chat pad or special accessories and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as button layout's concerned, this is what I'm used to the most, so I really come to like it. Now, as far as batteries are concerned, like I said earlier, it uses AA batteries. This is the only controller of the 3 main controllers that uses batteries, like removable batteries, like 2 AA's. They last around, they say 40 hours, but I say, good guess, maybe 20 to 30 hours, depending on how much you play and what kind of batteries you have. But again, if you have rechargeable battery packs like I do, it's no big deal. Now, as far as features go, you know what this thing has over the other 2 controllers? A share button. That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much all that. Aside from the new hybrid D-pad here, the only other standout feature this has is a share button, which basically you press that to take screenshots or hold it to record clips and stuff like that. But that's it. It doesn't have any special, it doesn't have the HD rumble, the Switch controller, or obviously it doesn't have the haptic feedback of the DualSense controller. It does have rumble. It's not going to blow your socks off, but it's there, so I figured I'd mention it. But as far as features concerned, it's pretty no frills. Nothing too special about it, but it gets the job done. And there's a reason that a lot of people prefer the Xbox controller, especially for PC gaming, and which brings me to the next point, compatibility. Now, because Microsoft Xbox and Microsoft Windows and stuff like that, the compatibility is pretty much seamless. You just turn, if your control, I can talk. If your PC has Bluetooth, if you have a Bluetooth dongle, or better if you have an official Xbox wireless adapter, which I'm not sure if they'll still work. It's been a while, good minutes since I used one of those. But basically, you just hold the guide button, then hold the connect button, and this will start flashing rapidly, meaning it's a connect mode, and then once your computer detects it, it'll connect. Now, keep in mind, that's for Windows PCs. If you're using Linux, it's a bit of a different story. You probably have to buy a separate Bluetooth adapter to get an Xbox controller to work. At least I got my PlayStation controllers to work on that. But as far as Xbox is concerned, if you're using Linux, you might want to get a Linux compatible Bluetooth adapter and then connect it that way. So that's something to keep in mind if you're planning on using this for like Linux PC with Bazite or SteamOS or anything like that. So something to keep in mind. But all in all, solid controller. You know, it's been my workhorse for quite a while for the PC. And occasionally I'll use it on the Switch, and I occasionally use it on the Switch with the 8-bit adapter. And maybe if I get one for the PlayStation, I might use it for the PS5. Anyway, let's go and get to the PS5 controller. Set you aside. Now, here is Sony's baby, the DualSense. This is basically an evolution of the DualShock 4 controller. It's hard to believe, 2013, almost 12 years ago, we were introduced to the DualShock 4, basically an evolution of DualShock 3, with a sort of hybrid, like thumbsticks. We'll talk about that in a bit. And as I kick my tripod, basically a few things that the DualShock 4 added was the onboard speaker on the controller, as well as this touchpad, which I don't have too many games that actually take advantage of. It's mainly used for like navigating menus, like, you know, doing certain actions and stuff like that. And you got the home button down here. But the DualSense controller has quite a few other features up its sleeve, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, first let's talk about comfort. Now, I'm going to get this right off the bat. All three controllers are comfortable. It's just, to me, it feels more comfortable than others. I already talked about how comfortable the Xbox controller is. The DualSense, definitely comfortable as well. You know, my hands wrap around these wings pretty easily, though they're not as wide. As you can see here, you can see how wide the Xbox handle is. This one's not as wide. I can still rip on it pretty well, but I don't know, just something about it doesn't feel as comfortable for me as the Xbox controller. Still a comfortable controller, but not as comfortable. At least for me, you know, if you have smaller hands, this might be pretty good for you, or maybe you're used to this instead of the Xbox controller. So, you know, whatever floats your boat. Now, as far as buttons go, what's really interesting about this controller anyway, is they use this like sort of clear plastic. You show off the symbols of the D-pad, the face buttons and stuff like that. You got the option to share buttons over here. Yeah, they feel a little bit mushy compared to the Xbox controller for me, but they're responsive, they work well. And of course you got the bumpers here and the triggers, which we'll talk about those a bit more in a minute. You already know. And yeah, the touchpad, easy to press and move around here. And you got the mute button for the microphone, which, yeah, that's one of the features the DualSense adds over the DualShock 4. Again, we'll get to that in a bit. There's your audio jack, as well as the contacts for charging the controller, if you have a charging station or whatnot. We'll get to that in a bit. And on top, you got your Type-C port, which I forgot to mention that in the Xbox. Yeah, all three of these controllers have Type-C ports, and naturally they're going to be on the top here. There's your Sony branding there in the back. That's it. You got all this, you know, legal mumbo jumbo, model number and stuff like that. And one interesting thing about the DualSense controller, some people know, some people don't. If you look really closely, you know, my new, even this new camera, the autofocus isn't that good. You can see, those are actually PlayStation face button symbols molded into the grip of the controller. That is really cool. Really nice little touch there. And especially at the DualSense Edge, I know I said I wasn't going to mention that much, but the DualSense Edge goes a step further by having rubber grips on the fronter part of this here, and the symbols are even more pronounced, and again, it adds extra grip to that. So that's a really cool feature. But yeah, just this alone, you can even see it from back here. You can see the dimpling on here. Yeah, all those little PlayStation face button symbols. That's a really cool little Easter egg there. And one thing I didn't notice, there's a reset button here. I guess if you need to reset your controller in case you need to reconnect it or connect to a different platform or PC. Yeah, you have that. Now, features. Oh, and when it comes to features in the first part controllers, the DualSense Edge, the DualSense and the DualSense Edge both take the cake. because, well, there are 4 features, big features, that make the DualSense controller a really awesome feature-packed controller. First off, haptic feedback. Now, a lot of, pretty much all of Sony's first-party titles for the PlayStation 5 and on PC, as well as some other PS5 released games, basically any games that have haptic feedback, these have really interesting rumble technology here. Basically, depending on what game you're playing, they'll vibrate at certain points. Like you're pulling back a bowstring on an arrow, the rumble will actually mimic the tension of the bowstring, then you let go. Or like you're shooting a gun, and a lot of different guns have different rumble. Like a pistol might be a slight rumble. If you fire a machine gun, it's like a machine gun massage on there. And even if you're not touching the controls, like you're just walking around, like the environment, like you're walking through grass or it's raining, the haptic feedback motors will actually, rumble a bit according to what's going on. Really nice feature. At least if you're playing on PS5. PC support is not as great, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, haptic feedback, really awesome feature. Another awesome feature, adaptive triggers. Basically, just like the haptic feedback, these react realistically. Like, now some games you can turn them off, but like, say like you're holding basically you're pulling a trigger for a gun. You pull like this, it actually has tension on it, and when you actually pull it up to actually fire, it'll actually disengage and feel like you're actually firing the gun. And if you're like firing like a machine gun, this will like vibrate, like reciprocate back and forth depending on what gun you're using. Really cool feature there. Not a lot of games utilize that on PC, but naturally a lot of PS5 games, they utilize it pretty well. Especially like Call of Duty, stuff like that. You're using certain guns, this will actually reciprocate depending on what kind of gun you're using. Really awesome feature. And yeah, number 3, I already mentioned the onboard speaker. I don't have that much experience with the DualShock 4 controller, so I don't know how well the speaker was on that. Hers pretty good, and this, I believe, just as good, maybe a little better. Like I said, I haven't had much experience with it, so I can't really speak too much on that. And of course, one feature that a lot of people don't like, the microphone button here. This has a built-in microphone, you see right there, and there's a mute button. So that's another little feature. Whereas a lot of other controllers, you have to like either go to the settings to mute your mic, or you have to get like a special like headset that has built-in like a control like mute and stuff like that. So nice, you can mute it right from the controller. So that's nice. Though one thing I forgot to mention about the speaker, it kind of correlates with the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. Like depending on what game you're playing, certain sounds will actually come through here. Like screeching tires, you're playing a racing game, or like like explosions, like shell casings fall on the ground. You're playing a first-person shooter or something like that. Really, really fleshed out feature-packed controller here. And as awesome as that is, it does come with a few downsides. Which the big one, for some people, the battery life on this is not the best. You're going like 10 hours with the controller, which makes sense because of the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, and the onboard speaker and stuff like that. Naturally, it's going to affect the battery life. You only get like 10 hours, and it's even worse than the DualSense Edge. You get like even less, like maybe a good like 8 hours. But naturally, if you're using that, you're probably just using it wired. But yeah, 10 hours. Not very long for a controller, but I don't play like super long game sessions with it, so it's not that big of a deal for me. But if you're a hardcore gamer, like playing through a God of War Ragnarok in one sitting, or playing like 100 matches of Call of Duty or something like that, you kind of don't want your controller to die on you. And yeah, the battery life on this, not the best, because they're encountering you to buy one of their charging docks or anything like that, which I do have. But yeah, that's the key around the battery life. And not replaceable either, unless you're willing to take your controller apart by prying this like faceplate off and then prying the back off, then replacing the battery. Which yeah, good luck with that, and you'll avoid your warranty. So yeah, So yeah, if the battery dies out in this, you gotta stick using it wired or get a new controller, which, that's another thing, price. That's one thing I forgot to mention. The Xbox controller, I forgot to mention. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. I know about the upcoming price increases for the Xbox consoles and accessories and controllers and stuff. These are going to be around $65 by the holiday season, what I hear. But as of this video, they're like $60. You might find them even cheaper. And of course, there's a surplus of third-party controllers. But if we're talking about first-party here, these are the more affordable, around $60. So again, you'll find them even cheaper on Amazon and stuff like that. So $60, at least for now, not too bad. DualSense, though, oh, they shot themselves in the foot here. This started at $70 when it came out, but I think like less than a year ago, they actually increased the price of these to $75. So yeah, not a cheap controller. You could argue, you know, the extra features this has kind of justifies the price, but not so much a price increase. But you know, take that for what you will. You know, if you're willing to shell out, you know, $750 on one of these, hey, you do you. Yeah, I do like this controller. You know, despite the price, yeah, it's not a cheap controller, but it's a really good controller for what it is. As far as compatibility, yeah, when it first came out. Now, when it comes to this compatibility, it's talking about PCs here. No, naturally they're going to work on the respective consoles. You get a DualSense controller, it doesn't work on your PlayStation 5. There's something seriously wrong. But as far as PC is concerned, it's a little spotty at first. Like, I know, like a few years after the PS5 came out, Steam added official DualSense controller support. But the thing is, not a lot of games support the DualSense. And that, obviously, you know, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, you know, Returnal, those games that are also on Steam. Naturally, they'll work with this. But you use it on a regular game, it's just going to behave like a regular controller. Like, the rumble will be normal and stuff like that. You're not going to get any of the haptic feedback or adaptive triggers in those games. Though, there are a few ways to emulate that. You know, if you've been on PC, you probably know about these programs. DS for Windows, which is mainly for DualShock 4 controllers, but they added support for DualSense controllers. But what I personally use is DSX. Now, it's a $5 program on Steam, but it basically unlocks more stuff for your DualSense controller on PC. It basically has emulated haptic feedback. It's not going to be a perfect emulation like what game you're playing, but you can adjust it to your liking. You can adjust the adaptive triggers to your liking and stuff like that. Yeah, again, it's $5, but I say it's worth it, especially if you really love the DualSense controller and you want to use it on PC. And yeah, it's definitely good controllers. Again, it's not as seamless as using the Xbox controller, but it can be done on PC, and it does work well when it does. So yeah, that's the DualSense controller, everybody. Despite its flaws, still a good controller. Now, let's get to, I dare say, the underdog controller, the Switch Pro controller. Now, before I continue, I haven't used this on PC at all. So, I'm actually not going to take that into consideration in this video here. Though I do hear, you know, there are ways to get it to work, and it does work pretty well from what I heard. I just never try to do it myself because, well, I kind of prefer for the Switch. Now, let's go and talk about comfort. Now, really, really comfortable controller. I dare say it's almost as comfortable as the Xbox controller, if only because of these rubber grips. Yeah, this is the only controller of the 3 controllers that has rubber grips, so that's a extra level of comfort there. Essentially, you can actually disassemble this controller pretty easily, whereas the Xbox and PlayStation controllers, they don't have screw holes. This does on the grips. You just unscrew those, and you can take these off, and you know, if you're tech savvy, you can do repairs on it, or maybe you just want to get a different faceplate or something. You do you. Yeah, I always like this sort of translucent shell on here. It's really nice. Pretty cool. Yeah, really comfortable controller with the rubber grips. Surprisingly, it has a bit of a heft to it too. It feels heavier than I remember being. Hope it's not a swollen battery because I don't use this controller that much. Ever since I got the 8-bit dough and, you know, MOBA pack controllers. But yeah, as far as buttons are concerned, yeah, it's pretty much almost a copy paste of the Xbox layout. You got the offset joysticks here, which yeah, you get the symmetrical joystick layout for the PlayStation controller. But you know, I do like both. I just more used to asymmetrical, and I'm glad Nintendo stuck with that for the Pro controller. Yeah, thumbsticks are really good. The D-pad, you know, it's Nintendo. You know, they practically invented the D-pad as we know it today. You got the face buttons here. Though, if I look a little closer, you can see they're spaced out a little differently. They're stretched out. The Y and A buttons are stretched out more horizontally. They're spaced out quite a bit more. So that's a little interesting there. And you know, Nintendo layout B-A-Y-X instead of, you know, A-B-X-Y, which I'm used to. So it's something I switch between these controllers. I still got to get used to that. The A button's over here, not here. But, you know, this is Nintendo's layout. They've been using it for decades. I don't blame them. And yeah, you got your bumpers here, the triggers here, which, yeah, these are digital triggers. It's basically just you press it and it actuates. It's not analog like the Xbox or PlayStation controllers, like you're either on or you're off. So yeah, not an ideal control for racing games, I'll tell you right now. Yeah, you got your plus and minus buttons, which means your start and select. You got your home button, pretty self-explanatory, and your screenshot button. So that's pretty cool. And just a little side note, yeah, the Switch 2 Pro controller, almost identical to this. The only difference is it has the extra C button, which you use like, you know, do like online chat and stuff, you know, stuff like that. And the Switch 2 Pro controller has back buttons, which is really cool. It ain't gonna be cheap though, $80 as opposed to this $70. So look at that price, it makes this seem like a bargain. But yeah, we'll talk about more of that later on. But yeah, button layout, pretty good. Just gotta get used to where the B and A buttons are located on here, switch between Xbox and Switch controllers. Now the battery life is, according to Nintendo, 40 hours. And that's a pretty long time, especially compared to the DualSense. And just like the DualSense, not replaceable. So unless you're willing to take your controller apart and replace the battery, yeah, good luck with that. Though, that's why there's a huge surplus of like third-party controllers from 8BitDo, you know, Game Server, MOBA Pad, stuff like that. Plenty of other alternatives, but as I said earlier, we're focusing on first-party controllers here. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, the battery life's 40 hours. But like I said, you can't really replace the battery unless you really know what you're doing. Now let's talk about features, because yeah, this definitely has quite a few features. Now, yeah, you got your home and, you know, screenshot button and stuff like that. But this also has NFC. Basically, you have like amiibos or amiibo cards. You put it on the controller, it'll scan it, and it'll unlock extra features and, you know, mechanics in whatever game you're playing that supports it anyway. So that's really nice. And another thing, HD Rumble, which a lot of third-party controllers don't have, but this does. The HD Rumble is not as fleshed out as a haptic feedback for the DualSense controller, but it's good in its own right. Like, you're playing like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, you know, you walk on certain blocks, they'll rumble like certain sound effects, or, you know, you do certain actions in other games, they'll rumble a certain way. Really cool feature to have. And yeah, it is a nice controller, but it's not cheap. Yeah, this used to be the same price as a DualSense controller, $70. But now that the DualSense controller's now $75 nowadays, this seems like a bargain. But it's still pretty pricey for a first-party controller. Again, that's why there's so many third-party controllers out there. You go on Amazon, you'll find like 20,000 different Chinese companies with third-party controllers that are hit or miss. But yeah, there are other alternatives to the $70 Switch Pro controller, but it does feel solid, it does feel comfortable, and again, it's an awesome controller in its own right. And as I mentioned, haven't tried using it on PC, but you can look online to find tutorials for that. But I heard it does work pretty well. I'm not sure how the HD Rumble works on it, because again, never tried it. But yeah, if you want a nice comfortable controller for PC, this isn't too bad. So yeah, not much else to say about that. So that's pretty much me talking about the big three's first-party controllers. Now, of these controllers, which one do I like the most? Well, especially pain to say it, for third place, I'm going to go with the Switch Pro controller. And like I said, I like all three controllers, but someone has to be at the bottom. And unfortunately for Nintendo, it's the Switch Pro controller. You know, it does feel comfortable and it does have some nice features. And I hear the PC support's pretty good, but it's just the other two controllers, they just blow it out of the water when it comes to PC support. You know, at least compared to that. But yeah, still a solid controller. I just prefer to use it on Switch. Like I said, it does work on PC and stuff. Haven't really tried it, so it's kind of unfair me to judge it that way. But yeah, it's still a good controller. But when it comes to PC, you know, I naturally go with the Xbox controller. But I also bounce back between the DualSense and the Xbox controllers, as well as, at least with the Hex gaming controllers I have, which, yeah, they're probably the same, just added features and stuff. But between these two, yeah, for second place, you know, you could say it's unfair because I only had experience like a year or so with these, but it's a really, really close battle. But for number two, the DualSense controller. That mainly because I'm just used to the asymmetrical layout of the Xbox controller, and pretty much the simplicity of it is what made it a winner for a long time. Now, don't get me wrong, the haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, onboard speaker, awesome feature to have, and they really flesh out the PlayStation exclusive games and whatnot. And you know, PC support, again, kind of out there unless you have like a certain programs and stuff, or you're playing the actual Sony patented or Sony licensed games on Steam and stuff. Yeah, you're not gonna have too much advantage. You're not gonna take full advantage of the extra features in this controller as you're playing on PC. Again, unless you're playing certain games or you have certain programs. But it's still a solid controller, and it's only number two because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm used to the asymmetrical layout and the overall simplicity of the Xbox controller. That's why I usually gravitate towards these when I'm playing like on PC. And again, if you're playing with respect to consoles, naturally going to be going for these. Honestly, those third-party adapters and stuff, they're just like preference and stuff. You know, naturally in the respect to consoles, they're your go-tos. But as far as PC is concerned, the Xbox controller is my number one, and this really, really close second. I'll just get that out of the way. Both, again, all three of these controllers are solid. Again, haven't tried the PC support for the Switch controller. Maybe I'll try it later on, but I don't know. I'm too busy playing with these two controllers to think about using this on PC. But as I said in the beginning, all three of these controllers are solid, and all three of them have their advantages and disadvantages, as I mentioned earlier. But when it comes to, you know, game on PC, the Xbox controller is one to beat. So many people recommend it, including myself. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with sticking to basics. That being said, if I just want to switch to a symmetrical layout, the DualSense controller, not too far behind. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this kind of crappy but still somewhat informative comparison of the three big three controllers: the Xbox Core controller, the DualSense, and the Switch Pro controller. So now we see what the future holds for the next consoles, whenever they may be. Obviously, Switch 2 is going to be in June, but the new Xbox and PlayStation, who knows? So anyway, this is I'm Caleb signing out. Y'all have a good day.